19 years old. I've been in love with the same sweet girl for 3 years. We were going to get married. I was going back to college after one semester. I was going to go back and get my engineering degree. We already had a neighborhood picked out for that house with a white picket fence, a dog in the backyard. But I was in Vietnam. And hoping and praying for my short timer's calendar to finally be needed. Still had a couple of months to go before I pulled out a short timer's calendar. Been there about 7, 8 months. And then I got the letter that she thought we needed to just cool it, back off. It motivated me every day. Every day I woke up with a smile. Didn't matter what happened during the night. It didn't matter how many rounds hit our camp. And in one of those camps, we would hit almost every night. We were on the Ho Chi Minh Trail between Saigon and Cambodia. And so we were in active camp. And we had nightly hits for periods of time. But it didn't make any difference. I'd get up in the morning, I'd smile, because the world was a good place to be, because I was going to marry my sweetheart when I got home, and life was moving on. Until one day, the letter came that she was having a change of heart, and she was dating some other boy, my friend. As the military called him, Jody. Any veterans here, you know who Jody is? Yeah. Ain't no use in looking down, ain't no discharge on the ground, ain't no use in looking back. Jody's got your Cadillac. That's your cadence, that's your drill for marching, or jogging, or whatever you do. Jody's got your girl and gone, was one of them. Jody's got your girl and gone. So Jody got the girl. And
just a little bit.
huh?
Can you turn it up just a little bit?
Can you turn it up back there a little bit?
Yes, sir.
Jody's got the girl and gone. So I was crushed, to say the least. When the letter came, my heart was broken. And I thought life was over. As I knew it, it was. There'd be no house and picket fence. And I didn't care if I became an engineer anymore, because life was over. And I didn't know what to do. I honestly was 19 years old, and I didn't know. What do you do when something you planned for 2 or 3 years is not going to happen now? And that's kind of the week that we've seen around here this past week. And so it called to memory a few of these kind of personal things, and I went from the mail call where I read the letter, standing there, anxious to rip it over and read the next. It always had perfume. You could smell the perfume and read the letter. And this one had no perfume, and it had the ominous message of "we're done." And I just didn't know what to do. Life was done, and so I just walked off. My commanding officer yelled at me, where was I going? And I said, I didn't know. And I just kept going. I didn't care. I got to Article 15. I didn't care if I walked right past the bunkers. I didn't care if a sniper was out there. I just didn't care. I walked for a while, figured life was over. I didn't know what to do. Came back to my hooch, and I was just knowing nothing else to do. I just got on my knees and laid across my cot. Didn't say anything, didn't pray. I just didn't know any posture any more appropriate for the moment than just on my face across that mattress. Beside my little cot, we had just strung up 4 by 8 sheets of plywood to give us a little privacy between us and the guy next to us. So they blocked the view. Finally, after a long time, probably 30 minutes of laying there, just still on my knees, I just raised up, and I just held a hand toward heaven. I hadn't prayed, I didn't really know what to say, I was just asking for help, really. It was just my way of saying, help me, God. So I just held a hand up. And wouldn't you know it, at the moment I did that, one of my ignorant buddies reached right over that plywood wall and got a hold of my hand. And instantly I flushed with embarrassment, and then I flushed with anger. I thought, what idiot is standing on his bed next to mine and looking over my wall, and why in the world would he grip my hand? And I wanted to just cuss him out. And then I counted to 10, and I gripped his hand back, and I got my composure, and I decided I would say something, depending on who it was. I figured it was Bob and Kevin. And I would just look up and say, Bob, you are an idiot. You nut. And so I got my composure and figured out how to respond to him, and then I looked up to see which jerk it was. And you can imagine my surprise when there was nobody there. But I was gripping. It had squeezed my hand, I had squeezed it, and I waited and counted to 10 for their right response. And then there's literally no one there. And in that moment where just goosebumps raced over my back, in that moment I felt God whisper in my ear and just say, if you would just hold to this hand and never let go, I'll work all things out in your life. Everything. It was one of those epiphanies, if you please. It was a life-changing moment for me. I didn't come away from that meeting, that encounter, that weird moment. I didn't come away from that with my problems solved. I just came away from it with an understanding that there is something bigger than the things that come against me. There's someone who knows more than those who would harm me. There is something so solid that through every crisis in life you can hang on to it, and life will be all right. Every time I see my grandkids, my daughters, my sons-in-laws, my wife, every time we have a party like we did yesterday, we come to church, we have a celebration, we worship, we play. Every time something draws us together in the family, I revel, I rejoice in the fact that God designed it and planned my life, not me. Thank God He steered my feet where a 19-year-old boy would never, ever, ever have wanted to move from. My life was sewed up. It was perfect. And today I'm like, oh, I say all that just to tell you this, that there is a hand. If you just trust your life to God, and you must trust that even when bad things happen, the steps of a good man are still ordered by God. They're still structured and patterned by God. Hang on to that hand. It's not going to guarantee you a perfect life. It's not going to solve your problems. It's not going to take away pain and loss and death and separation or divorce. It just supersedes all those things. It's just still there on the other side of the darkness. And it gets you through the fog that you can't see through. Hang on. Matthew 9, verse 18. While he was saying these things to them, Jesus, behold, a ruler came in and knelt before him, saying, my daughter has just died, but come and lay your hand on her, and she will live. It's amazing, isn't it? How in the world did this ruler come up with that kind of faith? My daughter has just died, and yet I believe if you'll come lay your hand on her. Good Lord. What faith he had to have. So Jesus rose and followed him with his disciples. And behold, a woman who had suffered from a discharge of blood for 12 years came up behind him and touched the fringe of his garment. For she said to herself, if I only touch his garment, I will be made well. Good Lord. Where has faith gone? me today. I mean, if he were to just suddenly appear, materialize, glow, and two angels on the side with wings flapping, you think angels have wings? She just said, if I can just touch the hem of his garment, the thing he's wearing, if I can just get close enough, if I can just reach over through, if I can just get around one of those disciples that are guarding and just touch, I would be. How long? 12 years? Came up behind him and touched the fringe of his garment, for she had said, if I only touch his garment, I'll be made well. And Jesus turned, and seeing her, he said, take heart, daughter, your faith has made you well. And instantly the woman was made well. And when Jesus came to the ruler's house and saw the flute players and the crowd making a commotion, getting ready to sing the funeral dirge, he said, go away, for the girl is not dead, but sleeping. And they laughed at him. But when the crowd had been put outside, he went in and took her by the hand, and the girl arose. And the report of this went through all that district. I'm just going to leave you with a simple thought today, and it's just never quit. That's our simple theme today, never quit. The stories that we just read are about two miracles. I'm going to walk you back through them real quickly. The first one, a man came and said, my daughter is dead. Come lay your hand on her and she will live. And he went to do that. He didn't say, well, I don't do those kind of things. But while he was on his way, another woman came up from behind him and touched the fringe of his garment, because she had told herself that if she could just touch his garment, she would be healed. And even though she was behind him, the scripture says it clearly. She didn't come up in front for an audience. She sneaked up from behind, and even though she was behind him, he knew. And he stopped and turned and said, take heart, daughter, your faith has made you well. And instantly she was. And then back to the man with the dead child. When he got to the house, they were already singing their morning songs. Christ told them the girl was asleep, and they mocked him. They laughed at him. He put them outside, took the girl by the hand, and she arose and lived. How fantastic is that story, and how simply put is the bragging on it in the next verse. And that report went throughout the district. I guess it did. I mean, would you tell anybody? Would you actually broadcast? And that story traveled around. I guess it did. But as all good stories in the Bible and all miracles of Christ and all the other things, there are certain little things that we just need to pause on them and get down in our soul, get in our heart, because these are the things that make us uniquely Christian. So there's about 8 things I'm going to share with you real quickly from this. Number 1 is simply that Christ can. I almost wrote number 1 this way: miracles happen, and the Spirit rebuked me. Literally, seriously. In fact, I had already written miracles in my notes, and I stopped for a moment, and it's like my heart just held up, and it was just like God said, miracles don't happen. That's a mistake to think of it as, you never know, a miracle might happen. When you say miracles happen, nothing wrong with that. I don't mean this is a lecture. I just mean when we say miracles happen, we're just denying where they came from. We're just ignoring that miracles don't just, you didn't wake up one day and suddenly everything was just wonderful and some miracle just happened in the night. And so when I got to thinking about it and feeling like I felt checked in my spirit, I realized that by saying miracles happen, we're just not giving Christ the credit for the miracle that he deserves. Christ can do anything. And I would rather say to anybody who needs a miracle, Christ can, than I would rather say to you, miracles happen. Because I don't know if a miracle is possible without the intervention of Christ. And I don't even know who you'd ask for one if you didn't ask Christ. Hey, Mother Nature. Mother Nature, if you could do something here about this goiter, They tell me I could drink more tomato juice, but I don't know. Some of us get caught up with trying to be healthy. Well, some of y'all. I don't get too caught up in being healthy. I eat, I drink, I dip and shoot, smoke, cut. I've had friends come through. My wife and I have joked over the years that guests that would come through preaching wise, and none sadder than our good buddy John, who was the biggest health nut we ever had to prepare for. My wife never knew what to fix for him. He was worse than Michelle Frederick. At least Michelle can eat celery. Y'all can tell I talked about it. John, I don't know if John would eat celery. Might have been too much fiber in it for John. He counted things, weighed things, measured things, and then I got a phone call that he was 45 years old. He died of cancer in Phoenix, Arizona. And I flew out to his funeral and walked by a coffin and looked at a perfectly fit body with no body fat. But he died at 45. And he used to just make so much fun of me when he'd come, because I'd eat greasy hamburgers and things that crawled. And he would say, "You're going to be sorry one day." And I'm still eating stuff that I shouldn't eat. I give God thanks for all of it, though. I believe it was all meant for my consumption in balance and in harmony with other things. I do give God thanks for all the things He gives us. But maybe that's part of the rub as well. I'm not trying to make sure my body is perfect. I just know one who is perfect. And I'm telling you, I have watched over the years that when Christ gets invited into the home, He can bring death back to life. Whether figurative in this, literal in this story, or figurative in your house and mine, I don't know any other answer than Christ. I don't know any other hand than His. But I do know He can. And I will never shy away from saying Christ can. When somebody comes to me and says, "I don't know what we're going to do about this, and here's our problem," if it's an emotional problem, I have one confident answer: Christ can. If it's a physical problem, I have one confident answer: Christ can. If it's a financial problem, I have one confident answer: Christ can. Christ can. I don't know if miracles happen, but I do know Christ can. If I told you some of the things I had asked God to do in my life, I just won't share some things. There are some things that are too silly and too embarrassing to share. Because somebody would think, well, if he asked, I can ask. And maybe you shouldn't ask, because I've asked for some really stupid things. And yet, some of those stupid things have happened. I've shared a few with you, and then there's always a few people like, "Yeah, really?" You know the water pump story. I know, you don't think I can drive from Wichita Falls to Dallas when the little hole is already blown out in the water pump. But if you're a poor preacher and you got no money and you got no credit cards and you don't know anything to do but go next door to the diner and eat a bacon, lettuce, and tomato sandwich and look out the window at the smoking car and the hood raised and the mechanic who's already said, "See a little hole right there where the water's blowing out? That's your water pump. It's got to be replaced." "I don't have anybody." But you ain't going anywhere till you get it replaced. And I just ate a sandwich and looked out the window and I said, "God, I'm just going to stop where you stopped me. I got nothing to do. I can't do anything here. I can't wire home for money. I got no card. I'm just going to fill it with water, and I'm going until it stops. And I'll just figure out what to do from then. I sure wish you'd get me home. You just get me to Mesquite, Texas. My dad and I can fix that water pump." I know. See, I told you. That's why I don't tell you other stories. I can see on your faces. But I put water in it, and the mechanic said, "I'll be coming after you after a while with a tow truck. You ain't going far." Okay. I pulled into the driveway in Mesquite, Texas, turned the key off, and water exploded and filled that driveway and ran to the gutter. But I made it to Mesquite, Texas. And I didn't have to stop and put water in it. That's the freaky thing. I know. That's why you don't hear any more stories. Your expression right there is you think I'm lying. I don't care. I know Christ can do anything. I count on Christ resurrecting a decomposed body. I count on Christ finding the pieces and the remnants of me. I count on Christ taking my body and turning it into a soul and letting me live eternally somewhere magically beyond the realm of imagination. Eye has never seen, the scripture said, it has not entered into the ear, neither can the mind conceive the things that God has prepared for those that love him fully. You really trust God for all that, but you can't imagine that he can fix things along life's pathway. And I'm just telling you, Christ can. I don't know about you, these are two phenomenal stories to me, and both of them that have come to me and said, Pastor, what can I do? I would have just said, I would start saving money if I were you. Have you had a second opinion? A second opinion has been 12 years. I've had 14. Let's see. We'll put you on a list. She's already dead. Well, let me tell you. You might want to call Klein's or Magnolia Funeral. And that's, seriously. Why? What two stories? And if they don't tell us anything else, they ought to tell us this. I don't care how big your need is. Christ can. Whether we ask or not, that's up to us. And whether we think he can, that's up to us. And somebody says, oh, you shouldn't give false hope. I'm not giving false hope. I'm reading two stories out of the Bible for pity's sake. Do what you will with them. One ruler came to Jesus and said, my daughter's dead. He didn't say she's sick. And if you hurry and get to the house, you might get there before she dies. He said, my daughter just died. Man. Lucky for him, he did not live in America in 2014. Because preachers who dare claim that Jesus Christ could do miraculous things today have just not been properly educated in the right seminary. Our job today is not really to promote Jesus, it's just to build a good country club without the golf course. Have a nice church. Have a nice gym. Let's play some fun games. Let's not build people's hope up into thinking Jesus can fix one of their problems. I'm just going to tell you, Christ can. He can resurrect you. He can heal you. And he just proved that he can do both in a few verses. Second thing I'm going to share with you is miracles won't always happen in perfect timing. There might be interruptions too. Here's a guy, I don't know about you, but I just tried to put, when I read this, I tried to put myself in that father's heart. Man, I have thought one of my babies was going to die when she was a baby. I mean, I just panicked one time when Ashley quit breathing. Sandy was bathing her on the top of the dining table in a baby infant bath, and the baby just quit. And I wasn't standing there. I don't know where I was. I was in some other part of the house. All I know is I heard a blood-curdling scream from my wife, and it was not the kind I usually heard. I heard something, but not that kind. And I jumped because I didn't have to have, she didn't have to say what it was. I just knew that tone, something bigger than a mouse in the kitchen. I ran. As soon as I walked in, she was holding a purple and blue baby, and I don't know. You can give them all kind of technical terms and medical terms. All we knew is the baby wasn't doing anything. And I grabbed her little old naked body in my arms, and the only thing I knew to do was Vietnam medic training. I just grabbed her and depressed her mouth, made sure there was nothing she was choking on, cleared the airway. And I'm already thinking, I've got to try to make sure I do CPR for a baby right. And I wish I'd taken a better class on it. I hope I don't crush a rib. I'm just running back to the bedroom to lay her on the bed because the dining table seemed wrong. I just run right into the bedroom. And as I run in there, I don't know, I can't explain it to you. Won't try. When I ran in there, I had a little bottle of oil, anointing oil for ministers, and people would ask for prayer. The Bible says, if you're sick among you, let them call for the elders, let them anoint with oil. So we'd take all the hospital down, and people that asked to be anointed, we'd put a little oil on there, a bottle of oil. Man, I ran in there, lay that baby on my bed, and decided what I'm fixing to do. And it's just like, hopeless, I don't know anybody to turn to better than to Christ who can. And I just grabbed that little vial and I splashed something here. I said, you didn't give me this baby to take it. I just don't believe that. I don't believe you gave her to me to take it. And I laid my hand on her, fixed to pray, and then I'm going to do resuscitation or whatever I have to, but it all happened so fast. I said, instantly, she just looked right, looked up. Color started coming back into her body. Oh, I know. You got this off. Well, some of y'all got 14 medical explanations for that. I don't care. I know what I did. I know that in that moment of panic and fatherly fear and love, somebody rescued me. Somebody who had the power, the compassion, and the clout to do it. He rescued me. And he saved her. And so I just thank him for that. But here's a daddy who comes to Christ a little too late, and yet he has so much faith. He says, she just died. But if you just come lay your hand on her, and if I'm that dad, I'm not like, hey, you'll stop and get a hamburger first? Are you following me now? This is the way I read the story. When I read the story, I'm thinking, if I'm this daddy, do you walk up, you know how you read the story. I mean, the story lacks passion. When you read a story in the Bible, it's just the accounting of the facts. They don't put the passion in it. I can't see a father coming up and pushing people, hey, can I step through here? Hold on. Oh, like he's got all the time in the world. And then he comes to Jesus finally after he gets through the crowd. Sir, may I have a word with you? I just don't see it. I see a daddy running. A daughter is dead, and somebody said that, you know, Jesus is just outside the village passing through. And here's a daddy that the wheels suddenly turn. Oh my God. I can catch him. I can catch him. My daughter just died. I can catch him. And you dads know. He didn't lollygag. He ran. He ran. He pushed people out of the way. He didn't care. They're cussing him, and he doesn't care because he had to get there. Hurry. And he had to get there with passion. My daughter just died. Passion. And Jesus said, okay. And they turned to go. And you know this dad is like, come on. Time's wasting. Come on. I don't know what happens when we draw our last breath, but it can't be good. This was a father before medical science would tell you how long the brain can live without oxygen. But he still knows it's not right. Come on. And then he's coming, and then all of a sudden Jesus stops. Hold on a second. Hold on. Interrupted. Timing is not right. I'm going to panic now. Hold on. Somebody touched me. Turn around, and there's a woman. So this guy's got to wait. Daughter dead at home. You know his heart's breaking. You know he's screaming inside, maybe outside too. And then the interruption comes. It serves as a fitting note for you and I to know sometimes timing is not our way. It's not always perfect. I remember years ago when Rick and Amy, when their son Matt was in the hospital he was having some kind of problems and surgery, and then they were waiting on his kidneys to function, and they weren't functioning, and we prayed, nothing was working quite the way the timing was supposed to be. And we were at the hospital one day, and we were just praying, and we said, talking about things. I said, somehow or another, God's timing. God's always got timing. I don't remember the details of the story, but I do remember there was a woman down the hallway, you and Matt were walking past, and she just hollered and said something to y'all. And then y'all stepped in. Remember that lady, that story? She just wanted to offer a word of prayer, Matt, and everything would be all right. And then they go back down the room, and all of a sudden, bam, all the stuff that wasn't working kicked in. The pipes were flowing again, and the doctors were relieved, the nurses were relieved. Rick goes down a little later to thank the woman. She's not even there anymore. She was in, she was out, she was gone, all discharged. And then he was reminding me what we talked about, how God, and one of the phrases we came out of that with was, hey, one thing you know about God is his timing is always impeccable, but it's never ours. It's never on my clock. It's always his. But if you just trust him, an interruption doesn't mean that he's not going to do it. It just means it's an interruption. That's the third thing on the screen. An interruption is just a delay. If you've asked God for something and it doesn't happen, but you really think it should, and you think he will, and you have faith that it's going to, an interruption doesn't mean he's not. It just means not now. And the best thing I'd tell anybody praying for God to do something great in your life is, hey, just keep waiting and keep hoping. I don't ever get the sense that God tells me no unless I'm asking for stupid things. See, none of y'all. I mean, listen, I realize the great gulf between me and you. I do realize that y'all are pristine examples of intelligence, success, and thoughtfulness. But I've even asked God to let me win the lottery a time or two. I mean, I've asked to pray, God, it wouldn't hurt you, would it, to let a lottery? I know, it's embarrassing. I'm ashamed to admit it. Because I know none of y'all would ever even think of it. None of you. Not one of you has probably ever thought that. But I did, and you could tell he didn't. Apparently he said no. But I'm still waiting and hoping. And there have been other things that I wanted God to fix right now. And he didn't. And somehow I lived long enough to look back and put those dots together. And I'm telling you, I find worth and value in every experience in life. My mother started getting Alzheimer's. Oh, dear God. I literally prayed for God to let her die. One of her worst episodes, she was kicking at me and screaming at me and rebuking me in Jesus' name because she thought I was some evil man come to violate her. My mother. But he didn't take her, and he has a purpose behind all things. And I have watched so many little things that I've asked him to do that he didn't do, and then I realized it's not that he says no. It's that he says, I have a different time. I have a different timing than you do. I have a different purpose. And that comes with really trusting God. And number 4 is just that anything you ask God to do, faith is always the key. You notice in both these stories, they're pretty cool. My daughter is dead, but I believe, I know. She says, 12 years. You know, one of the other gospel writers told the same story, and he said she had spent every dime she had, and wasn't any better, was even worse. After 12 years, said she had gone to positions and spent every dime she had, the other gospel writers. And she had, King James says, and she was nothing bettered, but worse. And then one day she hears Jesus is there, and instead of just saying like, oh, what's the point? I've tried everything. She had faith that he could, if she could just touch his garment. Number 5, sometimes it's not your faith that's active, it's somebody else's faith for you. And I don't know about you, but this encourages me a great deal. She had faith for herself. If I just touch his garment, but the daughter could not have faith for herself. It took her father's faith. Man, there's so many rabbit holes I want to go down and chase today. Don't ever stop praying for people you love. You've heard me say things like, well, God, if you say, God, fix my marriage, God doesn't really fix marriages. He fixes people. And he rarely fixes people against their will. But if you ask God to heal somebody else, and you have faith that he will, this story proves that he'll do just that. So if you ask God to intervene in somebody else's life, we know he'll do that. May not be the way you think, but he will. I mean, from Abraham down, the only reason Lot was saved, we know, is not because of Lot. It's because of Abraham. God thought enough of Abraham to tell him what he was going to do. Abraham said, but God, I got a nephew down there. A nephew. He's my nephew living in that sinful place. And God spared the nephew because of Lot. You know that's true. God, listen, I don't, sometimes we put guilt trips on ourselves unnecessarily, and I sure don't want to do it with sermon. You're not responsible for somebody else's choice. If somebody you love makes a pitiful choice, and they're punished for it, you're not responsible because they made that choice. So be sure you make that distinction with me today. But I have to remind you that there are so many stories that accumulate in my brain over the years of wonderful people who have turned to God in desperate times, and then they've seen such a wonderful intervention from God. I've shared with you, I'm sure, the story of the missionaries in Africa, the Freemans, whose daughter Sharon was living in California. They were missionaries in Africa. And dear old brother and sister Freeman, they were just people that loved God, and they were there because they knew God called them to be missionaries. But they, like every parent, they hated leaving their kids back in America and being so far separated from them. And so they tried to touch base with them as much as possible, and then they found out that their daughter was terribly depressed. She was going through some horrible things, emotionally and spiritually, and they're so out of touch. They're halfway around the world. They can't solve her problems. And so they don't, there's nothing they can do. They say, but pray. And they pray. And then one night, God woke Brother Freeman up with just urgent passion to get up and pray for his daughter. And without saying anything to his wife, he just decided that he couldn't just lay there in bed and pray. He just felt so compelled to pray. He decided he better sneak out of bed. He just felt like he needed to get on his knees. So he was just going to sneak out of bed. And as he was trying to sneak out the covers, he realized she's not in the bed. So he slipped out of bed to slide down on his knees and just say a prayer for Sharon. And then, as his eyes adjusted a little bit to the dark, he saw his wife kneeling on the other side of the bed. So he reached over and patted her hand. What are you doing? And she said, I just woke up. I felt the need to pray for Sharon. Y'all ever heard the word intercessors? You know that there's such a thing as intercessory prayer. That just means you're praying for somebody else. And so when he realized she had been awakened and they were both feeling this burden for their daughter, you know how you do. I mean, all of you that are modern social people, you understand. They just went to bed with the heaviness of their daughter on their heart, and that's it. And they just both happened to simultaneously wake up. They just both happened to be praying. And so he just reached over and joined hands. God, we're out of touch. We can't do anything for her. If something's going on back in California, it's daytime over there. Help our daughter. Unbeknownst to them, Richard had left the house that morning to go out and go fishing with a buddy. His wife had been depressed. He goes out, they put the boat in the water, they go a little ways offshore, and they've got the hooks baited, and they've cast, and they're trying to catch something, and then all of a sudden, Richard's sitting in the front of the boat, Buddy in the back, spins around and says, why'd you call my name? He said, what? You yelled my name. Why? He said, I didn't call you. He looked at it again and cast out again, and then a second time, somebody from the shore, it sounded like yelled his name, Richard. He recognized the tone of his wife's voice. He spun back around and said, is that you? He said, what are you talking about? You yelled my name. He said, I didn't hear anything. So keen to the need in the moment was Richard, so panicked by what he heard, that he just jumped out of the boat and started swimming for the shore, not too far away. Jumped up on the shore, ran to his truck, and just sped home. Just something in him, a hunch, something not right. He just sped it. Walked in, ran in, found Sharon laying on the bed with an empty bottle of pills beside the bed. She had decided to leave a note and take her own life. And Richard grabbed her, threw her in the truck, raced to the hospital not far away. And they would eventually pump her stomach and put her on some medication and tell him, man, how lucky she is. 15 minutes or so, she wouldn't make it. Don't ever refuse to pray for somebody else. You know why we put names in the bulletin every week can ask you to call an angel, because God will honor you praying for somebody else. Let your faith work, even if theirs is not. Don't ever cop out the easy route and say, hey, if they believe, they believe. If they don't, I'm not responsible. You take your faith and put it to work for them and ask God for His miraculous. And then number 6 on the screen, some people may laugh at it. I've been laughed at a lot of times. I've been afraid of being laughed at a few times. I actually had a great opportunity one time to just try to help a guy and pray for him, and I hesitated at the last minute because I realized that if I prayed for him and nothing good happened for him, the people around here would make fun of me. They'd laugh. And I literally did not get out of my seat on a bus and pray for a man who was collapsed on the floor and having a seizure. And I felt the Spirit in me say, just pray for him. And I didn't. And the reason I didn't is because I was afraid of being embarrassed. Well, what if I prayed and nothing happened? Well, what's supposed to happen? At least prayer would help. People would know you're praying. They know you care. You might, stick a belt in his teeth or something if he's really hurt and say, you might do something. Just get at it. But I looked around and the people didn't look like the kind of people that would be ready. I didn't. I just let him lay there convulsing on the floor. His wife screaming. And ambulance came, took him away to the hospital. And then I started thinking, man, what a coward I am. I'm such a coward. Who cares what people think? Why are you so worried about what total strangers think? Young man I was, 18 years old. And I said to God, if you ever put me in that kind of circumstance again, I promise you I'll just pray for somebody. I don't care what anybody says, I'll just pray. I said it to God, and he tested it. He did it. And in Vietnam, he did it a lot. We just had guys pass out sometimes. Had an officer just pass out. Standing there in a little circle of people talking, and suddenly he hit the floor. Well, he was actually a medic. And all we're supposed to do is, wake them up, revive them, and try to figure out what went wrong. We'll let them sit in the clinic and take a few tests. Once it's up, and I just dropped down in front of other soldiers and boys, and I just started putting my hand on the head and said, God, get him and wake him up, resurrect him here, pick him up, heal him, bring him back to us. Come on, in Jesus' name. And you know what he did? He rolled over and looked up at me, and he sat up and said, good Lord, what was all that about? I said, I was praying. No, I don't mean that. Where'd I go? What happened? I don't know. I just know I prayed. And did they all stand around and say, good job, Daddy boy? Of course not. They looked at me like I was an idiot. I don't care. But I know God can. I know Christ can do anything. I know that Christ honors faith. He does not honor fear. I know that Christ will reward faith, not cowardice. So you won't be a coward, you won't get much. The fearful and the unbelieving won't be happy one day. But the faithful will. Number 7, no matter, am I on overtime yet? Number 7, no matter how long you've been ill, no matter how long you've been ill, never quit hoping and praying. You saw that, didn't you, in the second story? 12 years. Doesn't matter how long it's been. Yeah, but if it hadn't happened by now, it's not going to happen. Man, if Buddy Hall was still sitting in here carrying, I would just say, don't you quit asking God, he'll deliver. Don't quit. Fred, I know you got surgery planned on the 22nd. I know it's the 31st, okay? Between now and then, don't quit asking. Don't quit hoping. Sandy, I know you got Fuchs dystrophy. Don't quit asking. Don't quit praying. Don't quit hoping. Number 8. I'm going to close with this. I kind of like this. I kind of like this observation in these scriptures. Come up behind him if you must. You know what it means for her to come up behind him? She was not the kind of person that would have been able to make an audience with him. And he might have rejected her if he had seen her coming. Her condition would be something that today we would say was a hormonal imbalance. She had it at a time that modern manufacturing had not created tidy things for a woman. So she had to live for 12 years, not a pleasant person to be around. Not able to always look her best, be dressed her best, or even smell like the best person in the room. She was accustomed to coming up behind. She wasn't the kind who would put herself out in front of anybody. But after 12 years of suffering, she could have taken an easy path out and just stayed in the room and hid and said, it's never going to go away. But she didn't. She kept asking, even though she didn't feel worthy to come and try to make an appointment, just come up behind me. I'll just come. I'm not the kind of person that churches recognize. I wouldn't feel comfortable calling a preacher and saying, hey, would you come pray for me? I would not want to be down at the front of the building and have somebody lay hands. I'll just either stay hidden, or maybe I'm just going to throw you out another option. Maybe one day you can just sneak up behind Christ, unworthy like you are, undeserving. And if you do, He's going to surprise you. He still knows you're back there, and He's still going to heal you. Healing is one of those awkward things for me to sometimes teach. I feel like I'm not really, some of you know me well, some of you just know me up here. Those of you who know me up here, you know, thank you. Those of you who know me well, don't ask Mara. Mara, okay. I'm not really a good man. You know, I'll eat what I want to eat, and then I'll eat it again. If it makes me sick the first time, it won't matter. I'll give you an opinion that you might not want. I'll give somebody else a piece of my mind. And my son, not that I gave him one, it's just that he saw me give some other people. I'm not a good husband. I've apologized to my wife along the way a few times because I'm not a good husband. I try to be a good father, but I messed a lot of things up along the way. But I will tell you, I'm telling you all that. I'm not trying to get you to say, oh, you're better than you think. I'm telling you that because I honestly believe when things happen to me, I deserve it. I rarely ask God to fix too much wrong in me. I go to the doctor sometimes, my physicals, fully expecting him to say, man, you're eat up with cancer from head to foot. And I always say, yeah, I kind of figured so. I deserve it. I don't, you know, I hadn't tried to live a clean life, diet, habits. And so when I get sick or kidney stones or heart attack like I've had, I just kind of think, I deserve it. It's all in God's hands. If He wants me to get better, He'll let me get better. But then there's a handful of people like, you know, like my wife. She's clean. She really is clean. She's a good Christian. There's nothing about her you have to worry about. She doesn't deserve it. Buddy Hall, one of the finest men ever walked in the shoes. Buddy. Fred, I'm not sure about Fred, but I think he's a pretty good man. And I see bad things happen to good people. And I just think, man, God will heal him. And somebody like, man, Austin, and you were born with something you didn't ask for. You hadn't even had time to be a bad person. Right? May I ask your mom about that later. Mom, she is. You're probably a really good person. You don't deserve that. It's so easy for me to just turn to God and God. Heal them, but not me. I rarely ask God to heal anything that happens in my body. I know that's a surprise to some of you, but I just figure, hey, he'll get me over if he wants me to get over. If he doesn't, I'll die soon. So that's pretty much what I deserve. So when I read this story about this woman who kind of had to come up from behind him, I don't want to bother him. I don't want him to even know that I have come. I'm not going to speak to him. I'm just going to try to get close enough. If I can just touch the fringe of what he's wearing, I believe in him so much. I will still be all right. Because I don't deserve his time. I don't deserve face-to-face with him. So I have a hunch I'm talking to some other unworthy people here today. I know a couple of you men. You notice I didn't call your name. And so for you and I, maybe we can hang on this last point. It's all right to come up behind him now and then and not feel worthy. Because even when you do, he knows you're there, and he's still going to turn around and say, your faith has been enough. It's made it. Stand, please. Somebody say, I was glad when they said to me, let us go into the house of the Lord. Would you give the Lord a hand of praise? That's our theme today. That's our motto today for life. We will never quit trusting our Savior. In Jesus' name. Somebody say, I'll never quit. Say it again, I'll never